It's officially time for round two, ladies and gentlemen out there. We're talking Rocky movies once again, 2 weeks in a row. Why? Well, because A, they're great movies, and B, because Warner Brothers put out on 4K the Rocky Ultimate Knockout Collection in 4K, films 1 through 6. Last week we talked about 1 and 2, and now we're back to talk about 3 and 4, but not just 4. Rocky 4, Ivan versus Drago, the ultimate director's cut, or whatever the hell they're calling it. And I'm joined tonight. It's Rocky 4 is a movie where worlds collide. And tonight, the worlds of kicking the seat are colliding. We have, for the first time ever, a matchup of me as referee with Bryan Martinez of the Spoiler Room and Accademia Giallo fame.
Okay.
Spoiler Room.
And not Spoiler Room. Oh, my gosh.
Cut me, Nick.
Giallo Room, the Giallo Room, because we were talking about the Spoiler Room, and I'm
Right.
also like dirt tired right now, so I apologize.
That's your fault, hostess.
I'm
man,
not-
You know.
I'm not going to go back and recut that. I'm not. We can cut Rocky to help him see, but I'm not going to cut that.
It's also kind of like free publicity for the Spoiler Room.
Totally. Yeah. Mark Krawcheck. Get some while you're here. You know. Your links will be down below. Yeah, good call.
No,
Not that you sound like that, Ian. I have a terrible impersonation of Ian Simmons here. Yeah.
No, I just when you said Mark Krawcheck, get some while you're here. For some reason, I flashed on like Mark owning a brothel or something like the Bunny Ranch.
I mean, he is the king of Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I mean, he works at a winery for a reason. He gets the ladies. Okay, he gets the ladies. He talks about nachos at his movies. Those are nachos. Those are ladies.
Nice.
Yeah.
What?
Remember, he talks about are the nachos going to be better in the movie? And the nachos are winning a lot of times. So I'm like, the ladies. So
we're getting way off track.
Euphemisms. We talked about this before we started recording. Yeah, euphemisms. Cut me, Mick.
Yes. And that's an in joke that's going to stay in.
No, it's coming out this.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say we're not going to let it out, is what I'm saying. Okay, let's get back to the introduction, because Don Shanahan of the Spoiler Room, every movie
I'm
has
in
a
the private Facebook group. That's where I'm at in the Spoiler Room. Yep, check.
Yeah.
The Giallo Room, the Spoiler Room,
Too many rooms, yeah. But we're stepping into the ring tonight to talk about Rocky 3. Last week, when we talked about Rocky 2, I confessed that I'd never seen it before. And I'd never seen Rocky 3 before doing the prep for the show. My first Rocky movie was Part 4. And it wasn't the director's cut, because I was 8 when the original came out. So that was kind of my Rocky until I went back and started rediscovering these movies in order. And I've got to say, I'm just going to put this out here as my high level opinion, and maybe the beginning of some good old fisticuffs.
Oh,
that I just barely heard that ring. Sometimes
mics
don't pick up bells that well, but
sure.
if I can find an effect,
I can bring it closer if you like.
Do that.
Oh, geez, that's really loud. Okay.
That was even worse. I heard nothing except
that's
your
okay.
reaction.
It's the dog whistle that's happening over there in Skokie, wherever you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, I think Rocky 1 through 3 is a perfect trilogy.
That's a bold statement. Okay.
These are films. Even Rocky 3. Even though you've got the spectacle like, it's Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, but for all the reasons we talked about last week, Don, where Sylvester Stallone, he's writing all these movies, he's directing them after the first one. With Mr. Oak Park Avildsen, I didn't realize he was a local guy.
I didn't realize that either.
But these are movies with themes and great characters and a through line that I don't think can be beat. The problem is Rocky 4 is not really a movie. It is a collection of montages, and it's a rah-rah celebration of Cold War supremacy and all that. And in that sense, it's great. It's got tremendous spirit. But watching especially Rocky 3 and then jumping immediately to Rocky 4, I'm like, they lost a lot in translation. I'm not just talking about ditching the funky robot that Rocky got for his kid or whatever, because that's nowhere to be found. Am I alone here, guys? Is there something wrong with me that I can't appreciate Rocky 4 anymore?
Oh, good question. Brian, what do you think?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to.
This is a masterpiece of the 80s. I feel like on my way here, I'm speeding from work to get here in order to make this show. and I'm listening to No Easy Way Out. Like it's a no-brainer. Like
Mhm.
when I saw you guys talking about Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, and then like the I guess the tease for Rocky 4, I was like, oh my god, I need to be on this show. Like it's a marvel. It's okay. Let me just rewind. There are certain 80s movies that still stick to me. Um, Actually, what are we talking about first? 3 or 4? 'Cause-
Well, we can mix it up. Yeah,
Hang on
yeah.
4 for while you're
okay.
there. Yeah.
So 3 contains, like, there's only a few, not a few, I would say like really big deaths from the 80s. Optimus Prime is one of them, and
Great
fucking
one.
Mick is another
Yeah.
one. So I think that this one, so 3 has it all. Like, my only thing with 3 is sometimes it gets a little awkward, where like if you happen to be walking by on the beach and you see like these two guys just jumping up and down, hugging each other, like it's a little weird in that way. Like, watching it again, I was like, man, I wonder if there's like an old lady walking by and she just happens to, you know, see that going on or whatever.
Old ladies will do that. Yeah.
But just the whole thing about you know, like being a star, right? Like being a celebrity, being in the eye, like getting drunk with that kind of lifestyle, right? Like I think this speaks to that. It speaks to losing your path, your way, in terms of, you know, being like, you look at 1 and 2 and he basically went through hell to be a boxer, and he earned it, right? And then you look at 3 and it's almost like, well, he's kind of resting on his laurels. He's enjoying the high life. He's like, you know, and it's kind of spoken about too, like when Mick says like, oh, we handpicked those fights for you or whatever, you know. So it's like, it's almost like he's getting kind of fat on being a star, you know. And I love that about this movie. I there's so many like iconic scenes from this movie that I just like in my head just just replay over and over again. I love the arc of this movie, and then it leads right into 4, which I've always thought it's my favorite of the bunch. Like I'm the guy. I'm the guy that loves Temple of Doom, like in terms of all the Indiana Jones movies. So for this, like for the Rocky movies, I just watch Rocky 4 ad nauseum, like forever or whatever. So like, I don't know, like I'll let you guys talk, but for me, this is like, I don't know, I feel like I'm in thespian theater with you guys talking about like these movies, because
we're in a couple of basements. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, and Donald, jump in for a second, but watching Rocky 4 for me was so jarring because it is so different from the first 3 films.
Oh yeah.
Just in terms of like not even pretending to have a story to like really thread through, other than, you know, Apollo's. It's like they established, okay, Mickey died in the 3rd one, so what if Apollo died in this one? And it was about the Russians, and the Russians are machines, so Rocky's got to beat the machine, and you know, there's steroids and all this stuff. There's so much. It's also the shortest of the films so far. So you're going from Rocky, which is a 2-hour movie from 1976, and then the second one is about the same time. You're going down to like 145 for Rocky 3, and Rocky 4. The director's cut, I think, is 133. It's 2 minutes longer than the 85 version. But it's like, it's kind of like, we know what these movies are now. We had montages. They seem to work. We can save a lot of money by just doing montages. And it, like, a moment where I had a complete Inception breakdown is in the beginning of Rocky 4, at least the director's cut. We flash on that scene where it's the montage of the events of Rocky 3. And in that scene, one of those scenes, Rocky's on his motorcycle. He drives up to the statue late at night, the statue of him, and he's pissed off, and he throws the helmet and it clangs off the arm or whatever, and he's all pissed off. Later in the film, when he's driving his car, he has another montage back to the entire franchise, and in that montage, we also flash back to him driving on the motorcycle up to the statue and throwing the helmet against the arm. And I'm like, what is this movie anymore? I don't know what's going on. It's like a Russian nesting doll. I'm not talking about Ivan Drago or his wife. It's profoundly weird because I fell in love with these movies, watching them again for this show, as films. Like I said, with great characters, surprisingly mature themes and meditations on aging and fame. And then you go to Rocky IV, and it's got a kick-ass fight at the end with Drago. But almost everything between the Apollo Creed fight and that is just like kind of filler. Did I catch what, Brian?
Did you catch the Giallo connection in Rocky 3?
Yeah, I know they all wear gloves, but that's not what we're talking about.
No, in the beginning, Paulie throws the J&B against the pinball machine.
Was that a J&B?
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too with the scotch. I didn't put the Giallo connection to it, but the J&B, yeah, it's spot on.
Italian, man, like,
of course.
So does this okay? It's official. Rocky 3 is a Giallo. Okay,
that elevates it. We're you and that cinema ladder over there, like, oh boy, here we go.
If I ever meet Stallone, I'm gonna have him. I'm gonna give him an $800 check to sign a bottle of J&B, and I'll put it next to my Sergio Martino. All right, Don, jump in here. Tell us what you think about these 3 and 4.
I'm lower than you in terms, like, most people call Rocky 3 the least of them, or the most redundant of them, or the most rote of them. That may be true, but I still like the arc of what they're going for, because it's a little bit of an erasure of number 2 in terms of, like, remember how in number 2 he has a terrible time, like, doing endorsements and reading off cards. All of a sudden he's a fucking expert in number 3. Like he, whatever GED program, it works for me. Like, he should be a television commercial for special needs kids succeeding. Like, damn. But so they accelerate his success as the ladder would accelerate him anyway. Like, once he wins and he's champ, all of those things that happened to him in 3 would happen to him. The high and the hog stuff that you're talking about, and the endorsements and the stardom and the better fitness regimen, because Stallone looks incredibly cut compared to where he was in '76. Like, Stallone, steroid Stallone showed up, and all of that, like I said, very likely would happen with 3, and I don't mind that progression. And to have the upstart challenger and the larger than life thing happen with Clubber Lang, and then Thunderlips and all that, like, that's just good fun. And from what you're talking about, Ian, about the through thread that you get when 3 happens right after 2, within reason, other than the opening montage, which speeds up the start of it.
We've got a few years, because they make reference to 6 years having passed from that first fight.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying, Don, but I think I can defend the better acting in the commercials, the more media side of it, because
it would take 6 years, let me tell you.
well, I'm just saying, he's been the champ for a while, and one of the things I love, the detail that, because I had never seen this movie before, but it's a great detail. Rocky isn't resting on his laurels. He's not getting fat and comfortable. He's still boxing. Because as he told Mick, he's defended his title 10 times in however many years. It's just that they were set up to be easy wins, but no one told him that. He thought, I got to defend this. There's going to be people coming after me, but it turns out they're not the hungry eye of the tiger types that Clubber Lang is. Our Chicago guy, Clubber Lang.
Of course. No, I think, but I still like it, because, like, once you put Rocky on top after the win in 2, you need to have that championship run be its own movie in 3, and I think that works.
Yeah.
And you get your happy ending again with 3, even if you're running on the beach and you're hugging and doing all that stuff like that. Like, that just, I like that. So often in sports, we don't. I think the situations where people genuinely hate each other are more rare than fighters that respect each other, or especially in that particular sport where, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of grudge matches and all this and that in UFC or boxing now, but, like, for the most part, there is a game recognizes game quality to just champions recognizing champions, where I like the progression of Apollo Creed becoming a friend instead of an enemy. Right. I don't think that's a cheapening of Apollo Creed whatsoever. I think it helps. And if anything, it's the hero arc that gives us what we're going to get with Creed later, like the fact that his dad ends on a high note with 4, of course. So now 4, I'm with Brian. 4 is a necessary, even if it's prickly, 80s time capsule of just all the excesses at the same time. The patriotism, the Cold War, the steroids, the gun show. Yeah.
Do you watch the the director's cut previous?
I did. I got to see it in the early state, like when they released it on Amazon. I got to see it for Advance or Press 2-3
Okay.
years ago when they did it. So yeah, I got to see it front and center,
You
which was really
you
cool.
watched the behind the scenes where like
Mhm.
okay, that's a cool, like it's still
Yeah.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Behind this, like, I missed something. Explain this to me.
So like there's like a behind the scenes, almost like Stallone talking about the process of him
Mhm.
making the director's cut and whatnot. And it's like an hour and a half
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever. It's crazy, but I
The
think
runtime of the movie.
Just about. Yeah.
yeah, I thought it, like when it first came on, I thought it was the actual movie, but it's just him, like the catalog the entire process of it, which I think is super. I'm a shill for this movie. Like this
Yeah.
for me, like I unfortunately I didn't watch this back when it first came out. This is actually the first time that I watched the director's cut for this show, and I gotta say, man, like all that stuff that you talked about in terms of for just feeling so like different
Excessive.
from
Yeah.
it breaks it down to that friendship level of
I agree.
Apollo and Sly, or Rocky.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And it just solidifies that, like that concept of, because it does away with the robot, it does away with all, I would say, most of the writs in this movie.
Yeah.
And it just kind of brings center focus on their friendship. So I think it's a good piece. Like it's a good. I don't see. That's the thing. I was going to ask you, Don, like if you prefer this version over the original.
That's that's a good question, because like there's something to the nose, the cocaine in the nose snorting quality of the original, where it's just balls to the wall. It's patriotism on blast. It's an explosion of so many things, and that final fight and the cheers and the just the 80s excesses. There's something to be said for absorbing all that and experiencing all that and like getting as high as the movie is on all that. But that the recut though is, if I put my film critic hat on and get the woolen hat and I turn into Matt Figuerholm over here, it's a better film, straight up. The adjustments that Stallone made, not just from re-emphasizing what could be done with Apollo, because it definitely got short shrifted in the original, but just the depth given to Drago, the extra notes given there, the recut fight with the different slow modes and the voiceovers and the darkening of things, and not everything being just ESPN vision. So it was
the funeral as well, like
great, like, all that. So like the director's cut stronger,
Yep.
Okay, because I have not watched the original Rocky IV in decades, or at least probably 15 years. But watching this, aside from the absence of the robot, I just don't remember. I was watching it trying to think of, like, it didn't seem different enough to me in terms of the substance of the story. So I'm like, what is different about this? And I guess that's my question to you. Is it more style? Is it substantive? Because I don't think what I remember of Rocky IV, it's not a good movie. And watching the director's cut, I still maintain it's not a good movie, because you're also comparing it to, like, seriously, most of this movie is montage.
It is.
Which you can get away with that. But if you're saying, how does it stack up to the 3 films that came before it?
Yeah.
You realize it's montage, but there's so many opportunities to flesh out the characters, what's going on with their lives. Like the whole thing of Adrian screaming at Rocky, "You can't win." That's a powerful moment. And then he goes off to Russia, and then she just like randomly shows up at his door and is like, "Oh, I guess, we didn't," and it's a surprise to him. Like, no one told him that his wife was coming over. That's like a whole like diplomatic thing, especially back then. I don't think you can keep that from him. Plus, I was thinking, wouldn't it be a cool story angle if the 2 KGB guys who were assigned to like babysit Rocky, if they were feeding information back to the Drago camp to keep tabs on how he's training and all this other stuff? I'm just saying, like, there are opportunities for stories and character moments that the other films I think would have taken, whereas this is just concerned about the highlight reel. This is the Deadpool and Wolverine of the Rocky films.
You're going there. I thought we settled this shit last Wednesday.
I'm just saying it's all the stuff that people love about the franchise, just kind of thrown into a blender.
By the time you get to a 4th film, and by the time you get to 1984, which is the peak of all cheap culture of 1980s, that's all you want in a movie.
Well, I would argue, Don, that 85 is the peak.
I'll go in 84, but I know
It
there's
was
some
made
pieces in
before
85.
it came out in 85. So there you
Oh,
go.
that's right. Never mind. Okay, gotcha.
You're both
But no, I think I think Stallone, when you watch that behind the scenes that Brian's talking about, and you hear the legend's regrets, so to speak, about like and and some of that being COVID, and like he's been wanting to tinker this movie for a long time, knowing that maybe his successes got the best of him in 84 and 85. So to see him, I want to say Ridley Scotted or George Lucas it, but just being honest about like, hey, I really had better intentions here. How can I convey that through? I've got all this footage. Can I make it? Can I as an artist improve upon my work? And I respect the effort that he did to do it, because again, I think it just makes a tighter, more, I don't want to say morose, because you're not going to tone all that down. It's still very montage heavy. I get all that, but like it's a more, to use the word you're asking for, Ian, I think it's a more substantive film, even if you're still in the mold of what it is as a montage machine.
But what a great, like, I don't know, like in terms of Stallone's career, right? Like how he started off as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, right? Like to go back and just kind of confirm that, like, yes, like maybe you kind of went off the rails a little bit, like high on coke and all that stuff, right? Like, so like to come back to it and just kind of give it that artist treatment, like I got a lot of respect. Especially,
I don't know how many artists would, I think a lot of people would be like, I made it, I'm proud of it, it's done, like so many people in that industry, especially at that high level, aren't willing to admit quote unquote mistakes. Absolutely. I mean, George Clooney will talk about the bad nipples all day long, and he's one of the few guys who will be like, hey man, I made a dog shit film, and he owns it, he wears it. A lot of other people would talk around it or dodge the question, and Stallone doesn't. So I admire that.
And I will say real quick, like, if I ever have a disagreement with the wife, like I in my head, that scene is replaying, and then I jump in the car and speed off into a tunnel.
Yeah, that works every.
It
does not work every time.
Play in my
yeah,
or whatever.
I thought, Brian, I thought you were going to say when you have an argument with your wife, you just go, "You can't win."
He says that, and then I speed off in the car, dude.
Exactly, like, and he grows the beard that he has now in Siberia.
Right,
comes back, and it looks good.
It's a Nighthawk's beard, and I dig it.
That's true.
I wish he'd kept that for the fight.
Oh, me too. I think it'd be a cool look for the fight. Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, and I call it the Deadpool and Wolverine of the franchise, because there's all this stuff that you recognize, but the training scene in Russia, the training montage, there's like 4 of them, I swear. The bit where he's running up that mountain. First of all, thanks to Stranger Things, I couldn't get running up that hill out of my head when he's starting off. But when he's up on top of the mountain and he's climbing, and all of a sudden he's doing I'm like, yep, that's what they did in Rocky 1 with the steps. Again, and I was thinking like, wow, that's really cool that Stallone did that, but why am I watching this? It felt like complete vanity. And I was reminded of that gag in Airplane 2 when they were talking about, and now the movie of the week, Rocky 5,000.
Well, I mean, some of this is watching. I mean, some of this has become calling cards. Like you kind of have to have it. Like a Rocky movie without a training montage would feel just off, like
that's not true, because you got
to name a franchise that purposely excises its bread and butter by a 3rd or 4th film. I don't have one that does it.
Can look at, but here's the thing, like you look at Rocky 1 through 3, there was light montage in there. True. In the way that we typically look at sports movies, where you show, because you're not going to show 3 months of training, you show it through montage,
and not a 15-round thing.
But they weren't. Okay. Aside, I'm talking about the training montage.
I know what you mean.
Specifically, right? But then you look at Rocky Balboa, which came back in 20 years later or whatever it was.
Has a montage, Ian.
It does have a montage, but it's also more concerned about the story than it is about the spectacle.
But I mean, look at the time back then too, right? Like Karate Kid had a montage. Like all these movies.
Well, and that was also done by John G. Avildsen. Yeah. But here's the thing. I mean, you guys are talking about these hallmarks and everything, but what you're talking about is going with the flow and being like everything else. And the filmmakers that really make a difference are the ones who step outside the mold, or at least try and do something different.
Yeah.
Now you can be the best, most successful version of what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
But me, if I'm watching it, I'm like, yes, Stallone made some really iconic movies, but then he also made a whole lot of shitty movies where he was just riffing off the same, deadpan shoot 'em up character.
Yeah.
And then you had Van Damme and Schwarzenegger, and that's why we love the 80s, because all these movies, but there are like hundreds of knockoffs.
But
and all I saw in this movie was knockoffs.
He made Oscar though.
Hey,
boy.
Don knows I will defend Oscar to my dying day. Yes.
No, I think what Stallone considers, I don't want to say avant-garde, but ballsy out of Rocky IV is even broaching the Cold War, let alone defeating the Cold War. So and then killing off Apollo Creed. I think that's tremendously ballsy. Now, is it predictable from is it telegraphed with every Star Trek red shirt in the world in the opening of that fight and how serious Drago is? Of course, but you still don't know that they're going to do it and pull that trigger, and then they do. And I know there's a malaise that happens, like you said, in the middle between the Creed fight and the montages to get to the final fight. But I think that's for a fourth film, progressing where you've come from and where you're going to maybe go or not go. That counts as balls. That counts as stakes versus now the montages are too much. But you're asking about stakes, and I think Cold War plus killing off Apollo Creed is pretty big. You couldn't
I
do
agree.
that nowadays. That's like saying make Iron Man 3 and you kill off Happy Hogan. You couldn't do it.
True.
Well, look, Don, I agree. I think the opening 15 minutes or 20 minutes of Rocky IV are solid. I think the closing 15 minutes are solid. It's just that hour in between where they take all the potential of that opening scene, and I think they just kind of squander it. Because when I'm watching the director's cut, I remembered Brigitte Nielsen being in here as Drago's wife, and I had heard that there was more of Drago in this movie, but it turns out it was just more of him glowering. Like, I thought, oh, cool, I'm going to get to know him. I'm going to get to know his wife and what that relationship is like. There's not...
He's got some nuances to him, like in the
more than usual.
Yeah, like I think at the end, like I don't know if we're talking spoilers yet or whatever. I'm sure.
1985. We can skate this.
But the end, like as being like my first watch with this, I was actually more satisfied. I think they tap gloves, and like he just seems more humanized in this one. As opposed to like this villainous like monster in the original Part 4.
That and you couldn't have a mouthy, larger than life villain 2 movies in a row. Like, you just got done with the Chatterbox Mr. T. You weren't going to go back to and he's also kind of halfway up the Apollo tree anyway in terms of mouthy champion or challenger, I should say. So to have the voiceless monster, is kind of that counts as a progression or something different than one more loudmouth guy.
Well, but here's the thing: he's a voiceless monster, but that's not a character. There's more in the visual. But he doesn't. He plays it as the. I'm not, but we're not talking about that. We're talking, Schwarzenegger. He was playing a literal machine, but this guy is not a literal machine. He is a man who culturally was bred to become a machine.
Yeah.
Now, there's a really interesting story there, because there's more story in the visuals of Ivan Drago. He's a soldier. He shows up to all the pre-press stuff in his uniform. There is this almost like a Tarkin Vader kind of relationship with the guy who's kind of running this program. You see the premiere, the Gorbachev stand-in who kind of comes in at the end. He's sort of like the emperor. There's a whole Star Wars thing going on here. And I just think that would have been interesting. The other movies do a great job, I think, with the exception being 3, because we don't get much of Clubber Lang.
His mouth doesn't talk in there,
Right. But I mean, in terms of Rocky, they do a pretty good job of splitting what's going on in Rocky's life and the life of his opponents and what their journeys are like as they come together and clash. In Rocky IV with Drago, that other side is just him being pumped up and punching and running and getting injected with steroids. There's no human aspect to it. But watching, no, it's not, because all this is propaganda. They don't treat the Russians as
also
people.
Intentional. Yeah,
I understand. Yes, but here's the thing. I get what the movie is. I'm just saying it's a dumb film compared to Rockies 1 through 3, which are not. Those movies are concerned with characters. They're concerned with culture. They're concerned with why people get into the ring. This movie is, You've got the Americans, and they're going up against the Russians, and the Russians are machines. They don't feel things. They're cold. They're brutal people. The fact that Ivan Drago has a wife implies maybe that he's capable of love. We see him breaking down at the end where he's saying, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me, which to me was his almost like quest to defect and say, you're breeding me for this purpose. There's a rebelliousness that comes out as that
that's
fight.
not in the original.
And that's not in the original. So that's steps, in my opinion. I'll take it.
And that's fine. But it's still, I would rather that not be there if it's not going to be surrounded by other stuff to fill that out, because I'm watching this thinking, where's the half hour of Drago as a character instead of 1 minute of like, oh shit, that would have been really cool, but now they're just punching each other again.
That's why it's a Rocky movie. You didn't get a half hour of Mr. T. You didn't get. Maybe got a half hour of Apollo. Like
no, you got much more of Apollo in 1 and 2.
You got two movies worth, but like guaranteed screen time total for T is same 30 minutes you're talking about, like other than a fight. So
I feel like Apollo is a much more major character, like in this universe, right? So you get more light on him and what he's about and whatnot.
And that is the degradation of this franchise, because it does start to go downhill, because the first movie is very much concerned about Apollo Creed and about Rocky and their parallel journeys, because you're seeing Apollo Creed is the businessman who's up on top, doesn't think he can be defeated. He gives this guy a shot just because it's going to look good and be great publicity. The second one, you've got a man whose ego is destroyed on the world stage, who wants a rematch, going up against the guy who doesn't even think he was worthy to really step into the ring the first time, but he also wants to prove to himself that he could do it. The third one, I think, is great because we don't get a lot of Clubber Lang. What we have out there is the shark, the guy that everybody else is kind of comfortable, and to use that phrase we were talking about, kind of resting on their laurels, even though Rocky doesn't realize it because he's been lied to by the people around him.
Okay.
You've got the guy out there he's hungry. He has that eye of the tiger, and he wants to prove that not only does Rocky not have it, Apollo doesn't have it. And he's right. And his ego does end up bringing him, it is his downfall. But the great thing about the end of Rocky 3 is the big freeze frame we get is not just on, Rocky and Adrian. It's with Rocky, Adrian, Apollo, and Paulie. And I don't remember if Duke got in there, but it shows that it's the team effort, the family that's been building up across these three films. At the end of Rocky 4, it's Stallone and the flag and all this other stuff. It's a great piece of propaganda, but it is not a film.
See, like, that's the thing. I think with Stallone's trajectory, right? Yes, he made some really great, like, films, right? Like in his early career. Look at Rambo. Like, look at First Blood.
Yeah.
When it first came out. That was a film that took some elements, right? Yeah. And he made it his own, and it's a great film. My taste, I love Rambo. I love the second one. Like, for me, it's almost like when you take a look at, like, in my head, like, I just compare these to cars or whatever. Like, you have this nice, like, Mercedes-Benz kind of car, like, right off the gate, right? And then once you figure out like whatever the puzzle is to, fame or whatever, you want to take that Ferrari out for a spin, you know what I mean? So I think with Rambo, First Blood Part 2, and Rocky 4, I think they came out around the same time. Those movies are goddamn Ferraris, like, screaming down the street. So it's like, for me, for my taste, like, for growing up in these, like, 80s kinds of, like, movies where everything's in your face and crazy, those movies stand out more to me. Now, I do agree, if you want to go back and look at, like, film, like the way that he just staged everything, just all the pacing in those earlier films, they're great. Like, I don't think he needs to prove anything other than I'm just having a fucking great time with these movies. You know what I mean? So,
no, I think another angle is the nuanced things that you're looking for, Ian, would make a whole lot more sense, would lessen the propaganda and become elements of character depth. I just don't think those were possible then or now. and maybe more so now, and even especially with watching Stallone do the revisionist treatment that he did for the director's cut, where there's only so much you can shave before you're cutting off bones of that movie,
Right,
you know. So
Right.
you can't amputate its legs at the same time you can trim its muscles. But so for 4, I definitely know in 1984 you could barely do the nuanced sympathetic villain stuff that got snuck into scenes that turned into the director's cut, with Drago even standing up to his wife or the man. And the fact that you even have Russia acknowledge an American fighter now, again, it's to reward your own heroism in terms of the American stuff. It's very propagandish, but you just could not go there and say
You
that.
could. I mean, no,
Not in 1984.
Yes, you
could
there
not
were
name a
the
film that does. Bullshit. Ruskies.
Yeah.
Please.
The 3 kids, they find the one soldier, the Russian soldier. I haven't watched it in 40 years.
I know.
But there were plenty of movies in the 1980s that were counter propaganda, where they were trying to show the Russians as people, and it was still showing the United States superiority because freedom is great. You look at Moscow on the Hudson. Robin Williams comes to, I defect. That whole thing. There was so much going on in the 1980s that did try and humanize, the Russians and paint them as actual people, because they are.
I agree.
But not to the detriment of America. It was totally possible. I just don't think that was on anybody's mind when it came to this movie. To me, my perfect Rocky setup is you have 1 through 3, and then you cut to Rocky Balboa, because those are films with stories that have a great ending. You skip
I don't know. I think
4 and 5 completely.
I think the loss of Apollo, even though you got. See, to me, I know you don't like Ivan Drago, but Ivan Drago is the best villain he's ever had. I mean, that's more than me stuff there.
I disagree. I think Clubber. What I liked about Clubber Lang is because he got inside Rocky's head, and the way that Rocky defeated him was by throwing that back in his face. The taunts, the kind of the dancing around, because Clubber Lang was the mouth throughout the entire thing.
Right.
And he let his fist do all the talking, but then at the end, his whole thing was he had been spoiled because he was so powerful that he took people out within, like, if they lasted around 2, that was still too long. And Rocky's strategy was wearing him down, taking that beating until he was worn out, and then when he finally had him on the rope, so to speak, then he started the psychological warfare. Rocky 3, I think Clubber Lang is a great villain, not so much in who he is, but what he represents and what he draws out of Rocky and forces Rocky to use as a new tool.
I think also Rocky 3 has a lot of soul to it. Like, there's this whole bit where, like, you got to go to, like, the ghetto and just really learn, like, the ins and outs of, like, who Clubber Lang is, like, who you're fighting, right? So it's like, I think, like, watching 3 again, I just liked it much more this time around.
Oh, sure.
And then, like, the whole thing with, like, actually, him being gone, like, for real, like, in real life. Apollo.
Talking about Apollo, yeah.
Like,
that's the other thing we didn't mention, because we lost Carl Weathers this year.
So it just made it that much sadder for me,
Sure.
like, watching it this time around, and then, like, the whole friendship angle on the recut before, like, that just. For me, anyway, like, as an already fan of these films.
Yeah.
I want to correct what I had said. I want to correct what I had said. I don't know how you would pull this off, but if you could recut 4, you turn it into a 20-minute movie where Apollo Creed goes and fights Ivan Drago and gets killed, and Rocky's like, fuck this, I'm retiring forever. And then you fast forward to Rocky Balboa. There you go.
No, I mean, like, see, I'll go back to what I was saying about Drago. Like, as much as I would love to see old Apollo Creed and old Rocky grow old together, live in that restaurant together, do whatever they're going to do, is
jump around on the beach.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Old bromance farts forever. But the loss of Apollo Creed is so big in terms of the escalation and the evolution of that character going forward. I know they didn't leverage it and use it the best in 5, but in Rocky Balboa, it's huge. And in Creed, it's tremendous.
Yeah.
So like, seeing now, that's hindsight's 2020. Don't get me wrong, but like, but by Drago being the agent of that chaos, or the agent of destruction that took Apollo Creed from Rocky Balboa, That's the mortal enemy stuff I need. And then I know it's not the mouth of Clubber Lang, but it's more, and I don't mind like I said, I don't mind the voiceless villain where it's what he stands for. And I know some of the what he stands for thing is the Cold War junk, but the bigger, stronger, faster guy, and the machine, and just like, and versus the grit of what he used to be, and the obviously the duality of their training being separate, and the styles of the styles that are different, the sizes that are different, and like, and then what the man did to Creed. It needs that. And I know it's a hero's revenge story where it's like a shoot 'em up movie more than a boxing movie, but without that, you don't have the regrets in Rocky Balboa. You don't have Tony Burton showing up to help train Rocky again in Rocky Balboa. You don't have anything with Creed. And those have been just icing on an already great cake when you can extend the universe further. And I'm a defender of Creed 2, where you bring Ivan Drago back and his son back, and that's just damn fun. Where I was eating that up like crazy. So,
dude, when that happened, like I'm in the restaurant, like, oh my god, this is happening.
He's sitting in the restaurant just staring him down, like, I love it. And Stallone shivering in his boots, like, that man could still hurt me, and because he hurt me before. Like, just you don't no fighter in Rocky's resume gives tingles like that, like Ivan Drago. It's just on another level. I know he doesn't have the mouth, and I know he doesn't have the charisma and personality, but that's the specter of what he is. It's just so big.
Precisely right. The specter of who he is. Like, he's bigger than, like, you know, to Ian's point, right? Like, they kind of dehumanize him in the original version, but I think it's for purpose. Like, I agree. It's to show, like, and a lot of it too, I was going to say earlier, like, I feel it's like the Iron Curtain. It's mysterious. So you don't want to, like, it's not that you don't have any interest to learn their culture, but it's not what this movie is about. It's about going to enemy soil and claiming your championship back. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's about. That's why he chose, which is another great point in this director's cut. I like that he's facing the boxing committee, because they don't want any part of this or whatever. So he goes outside of it, and he travels to Russia in the cold to defeat this like almost undefeatable enemy. You know what I mean?
You know, and so you're saying the boxing commission thing was inserted for the director's cut? That makes sense, because I think that was terrible. And I'll say why. There are no.
You just hate this movie, dude.
I know.
Because it doesn't hold together as a film. And I know you're like, but it's Rocky IV. I'm like, yes, but it's the follow-up to Rockies 1 through 3, so it's got some responsibility to it.
Those exist already, so let's.
You got it.
No. Here's the thing. If you're going to say, okay, here's Rocky IV, and it's another in the series of these great films that you love, then I have Don, this is the word you hate, an expectation that it's going to be worth watching. And in my humble estimation, it's not. It's flashy, but it wears the skin of what had come before in those, I think, terrific 3 strong films. Yeah. But there's nothing wearing it, or there's no bones. But what I'm saying about the boxing commission, he goes in, he faces them down. Again, it is a great scene. However, it goes from, we are not going to sanction this fight, you're not fighting him, to a newspaper montage about, well, there's this big fight happening in Russia. I'm like, wait, I'm sorry, what? You just told me this fight isn't going to happen, and now it's happening. How did Rocky orchestrate that? How does that happen? Because I thought the boxing commission would have to sanction it. They don't explain any of it. So I'm just watching it thinking, that's a sloppy cut. There are so many sloppy cuts like in boxing, this version.
In boxing, like we're seeing it now where fucking Tyson's going to go fight Logan Paul, for Christ's sake. Like, money is what comes before everything.
But here's the thing. In the world that we've established with Rocky,
you're in superhero sci-fi land of boxing too, where none of this stuff happens. Guys don't get punched this often and don't die. Right. Like, we're in superhero land anyway.
And that's another problem that I have with this movie, because we go through all of
through 12 if you want. They're all that bad.
No, I mean,
Oh, they're unbelievable fighting scenes. It looks great for a movie, but it's unrealistic in the sport. Completely.
But I will say, like,
here's the problem with Rocky
Lemieux
IV
one.
specifically. Hold on. Here's
Yeah.
the thing with Rocky IV specifically. When they're showing Ivan Drago being a machine and talking about the force with which he exerts these punches, and he's like destroying equipment, and then he steps into the ring with Stallone, and he's going round and round and round, taking all these punches to the face, and Stallone is still like, I get the whole thing of like he can take abuse and keep getting up because we've been doing it for all these movies, but they're making it a point of saying this is something that no human being should be able to withstand. And I'm sorry, but an indomitable spirit is not quite enough to get around that.
That's the superhero land that we're in. Domino's Rocky should have never won any fight he's in the ring with. Right. Apollo Creed should have wiped the floor with him. Clubber Lang should wipe the floor with him. He should lose every time, but that's the whole point. His spirit
is what always wins. No, because he learns new techniques in all of these
from the old
training
penguin guy.
Yeah,
not enough. Like, again, none of this would happen in real life in any semblance, shape, or form.
You might have a point there. You might have a point there, Don. But when you go out of your way to make it to imbue the villain with almost superpowers, you're drawing a giant shiny red arrow to the fact that this is. But again, it goes back to that propagandistic element of it. Is now we're watching a cartoon, whereas in the first three films, it is about much more than the fight at the end. So that at the end, you're more invested in what's going on with these characters rather than, he's training, they're beating the crap out of each other, and then he's going to win.
I think we were massaged in the direction of cartoon by 3, because to conveniently turn your big enemy from the first 2 movies into your chummy best friend running on the beach, we're in cartoon land. To have Clubber Lang with the feathered things and the mohawk, and to have the Thunderlips charity fight.
Thunderlips is a goddamn cartoon.
He's 6'8", 304.
But that's the point of the Thunderlips, because it's a no. But here's the thing:
progression is there.
No, not in terms of being an actual villain, because Thunderlips played by Hulk.
Yeah, like progression towards a cartoon. We're there.
But what I'm saying is, if Thunderlips was supposed to be an actual opponent that Rocky was facing off again, then I would agree with you. But the whole point of that was we were in the era where Rocky is doing endorsements and he's like, I'm going to do this show tournament for charity. We're going to have a boxer fight a wrestler. It's ridiculous.
You couldn't do that
show business aspect of it, right? It's not like Thunderlips was the big villain that Rocky had to overcome for the movie. He was a level boss at best.
Yeah, and that's if anything, I have fun with the Thunderlips stuff, but like because I'm a wrestling guy, but like that is a complete throwaway scene. Other than just Mickey has a little bit of a problem with his ticker. That's all we're doing in that scene is showing off Hulk Hogan because he can before Hulkamania blows up.
But it's impressive when he throws Rocky out of the ring. I mean, it's great theatrics.
But it's cartoonish. Watching 3, it made me not surprised for 4 because we were going in that direction. And then we get to 5 and we have an actual boxer and we're screwing around the streets and we don't even have a retired guy who should be dead is not dead, but still kind of like screwing around for, one of those times stuff like, you get back to the brass tacks, so to speak, with Balboa in 06. And that's beautiful, glorious, the second best movie in the trilogy. Or in the series. So,
and here's my point with all of this. I don't disagree. We might disagree a little bit on the cartoonishness of the progression of it, because I still maintain that Clubber Lang, even though he's got the accoutrements of like the feathered earrings and the mohawks and everything, that's just Mr. T. If you shave his head bald and don't have the feathers in his ears, then he's the same character, but you lose that kind of like, well, he's just this flashy cartoon character.
Same thing with a 6'7" blonde guy and a mohawk and steroids.
Well, but I'm saying,
you want to look or you don't want to look.
Clubber Lang had more implied character to him and importance to Rocky as a person in 3 than what we got with Ivan Drago. I'm saying the seeds of a great Drago character were in Rocky 4. They just didn't bother to water, let them grow. My point, but what I'm getting at though is I understand you are correct that things get ridiculous by Rocky 4. My solution is don't fucking make Rocky 4. If you've told your story, go write another great sports movie or hero's journey or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, if you're asking me to say, here's a Rocky 4, I'm like, didn't we tell the whole story with Rocky 3? I guess, by the end of Rocky 3, well, I guess there's more to tell, but there's not really.
Well, that's like, I mean, we're there already with like Creed 3. Creed 3 was very Rocky 3. We're like,
yeah, and that's
the winner's still the winner. We can go further if we want. If we don't, we don't. But
I watched Creed. I didn't think it was a very good movie, and I didn't watch Creed 2 or 3 because when they said in Creed 2, "Oh, we're bring back Ivan Drago," I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
And I was
because
like,
all you're doing is Rocky 4ing it up again.
Yeah, no, I knowing you, don't watch Creed 2 and Creed 3.
Right.
I won't. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not planning to watch them ever.
Yeah, it's a bummer because I think there's elements of Creed 2 that accentuate Rocky 4 nicely without having to be beat for beat the same because it's not. So yeah,
it kind of bookends it, like in
really
terms of the world. Like it's like
you got to have a book in order to have a bookend, though, because Rocky 4 is not a book.
This
it's
is the guy who goes 1 through 3 are the perfect trilogy. The book is there, and it just has cartoonish middle, as those coloring pages in the middle. All right.
No, there is nothing aside from Clubber Lang's personality. There's nothing cartoonish about Rocky. You said the enemies becoming best friends or whatever as being a cartoon. It might be a cliche, but as we've talked about, Apollo Creed is a great character, and his relationship with Rocky is what gives us the foundations for the tragedy of his death in Part 4.
The movie you don't want, Ian. I don't understand how we can't have tragedy now. Like you're just
I'm not saying
here.
that.
Like, if you want Apollo to be such a great character, his death elevates him already being a great character. Like you're talking about excising 4, and I won't do it. So like
I'm saying if all you had was 3, you don't have to kill off Apollo Creed in order to have him be a memorable or important character, right?
But boy, does it kick the movie in the pants a little bit. It's
no, I mean,
is there a version of Rocky 4 that's awesome without the death of Creed?
There's a version of Rocky 4 that's awesome if you actually make it into a movie. What you have now is the beginning of a movie, a very strong beginning with the death of Apollo Creed, and the revenge at the end with a great fight with Ivan Drago. What you're missing in the middle is all this substance of, let's just say, we'll leave Rocky 3 on the table, but if you took the heart and the desire to tell great character stories of Rocky 1 and 2 and infuse that into 4, then we're talking about an all-time classic.
But my heart's on fire, Ian. The song told me it was. Come on.
Okay, and I know, Brian, you love that song, but it is no Eye of the Tiger. It's not even A Search Is Over. It's like third-ranked Survivor at least.
Like,
but no, if you think Rocky 4 is bad now, go watch the original, which doesn't have any of these nuances that Brian and I are talking about that were attempted to be revised in as best they could with the footage and time they had. So. Yeah.
The thing is with Rocky 4, I think I'm just going to sum up like I think we're coming up on an hour or whatever, but like this entire hour, it just dawned on me that I love fucking awesome movies, not necessarily great films or whatever. But for me, like this is almost like this is the movie that I was like, okay, I'm good with Rocky after I watched this movie the first time. And then they came out with all the other ones or whatever. And then to Don's point, like when Rocky Balboa came out, I was like, oh, okay, you got my attention again. You know what I mean? But this one, for me, it just has it all. It doesn't. Well, actually, in the director's cut, it does have Eye of the Tiger. But I was going to say that the entire goddamn soundtrack is equivalent to an Eye of the Tiger, I think.
It's so good. It's so cheesy, but so good.
It's so good, dude. And then like the montages are fucking necessary in this movie. Like, I think
I miss movies like we haven't had a good modern movie that has like songs made just for the movie soundtrack. Like we have needle drops of James Gunn style stuff where it's like old songs meant to be kitschy fun things, but like Top Gun, this movie, like original songs made for the movies that become a kickin' soundtrack that you can't hear anywhere but the movie and have context with the movie. And I miss that. We don't get those anymore ever. So
to kind of like I guess put an exclamation point on what Don just said. if you think about it, in Italian culture, and I'm just going back to Giallo films and whatnot, Italian Giallo, but the film served as like almost like an entertainment like night out or whatever. So there was a lot of sleaze, there was a lot of murder, there was a lot of like stuff going on in these movies, but they were paced in such a way where like if there was a lull, all of a sudden there's like a crazy kill, and then the audience is right back into it. For me, the montages serve that same kind of thing where it's like it's a high point in the film. It takes you to where you're going to next, but let's have a goddamn fun ride getting there. You know what I mean? Like I think that's for me, that's what 80s montages basically boil down to. This movie has a surplus of them. I'm not going to argue that, but I think it's what makes this film so iconic. I think the director's cut is great for my taste, for somebody that just loves the original the way that it is. But if you take any piece out of the original, like I think you just miss the entire formula of what Rocky IV was set out to be in the first place. And that's what I'm here for, is the amazingness that Rocky IV is. So
I can't get there with either of you guys, but I will say, I have enjoyed this discussion for the most part. I knew I was off to.
Are you gonna throw your J&B bottle at the screen?
Oh man,
that bitch is signed. No, okay. Here's the thing. I knew I was off to a bad start with the opening of Rocky IV, the director's cut. Now I don't know if this was different in the '85 version, but in this one, you've got the kind of the montage of Rocky's, Rocky III, and then you've got the fight, and then you've got this pop song. I don't know if it was Survivor or whatever, but the music fades out as the Rocky logo kind of like goes across, and it's almost like in silence. And it's a very different vibe from, there's no Bill Conti score going on. It's a different course than what we have, but it just felt like it was like a deflated balloon. Like we've got the excitement and the adrenaline, and it's like,
unless it's a lock you in thing, like there's choices made here,
but it locks you into Apollo looking at like this new Russian fighter, right? Like it kind of gets you right.
But it's this gray title card. I don't know if this is what Stallone had put in when he was retinkering, but the text is gray. It fades out, so there's no music, and it's just this gray block of text sliding over. I'm like, I don't know what exactly this is going for. It's just, it felt off as comparison to the other movies. And I don't think they did this in 5 I haven't seen 5 or 6 in a long time.
To me, it felt very solemn. It felt very much like we're going to watch a movie where basically Rocky's best friend dies. You know what I mean? Like that's what it, to me.
However, that is almost a meta statement. Because if you've never seen,
but that's what I'm saying. Like for me, that's what it felt like. I was like, the music kind of muted away, and it was like, oh shit! Like now,
but here's the thing. Like one, but here's the thing. If you're let's just say you've never seen Rocky before, and you know nothing about these movies, you're watching it. Well, no, you're watching.
That's how I started too, though. I get it. Yeah, I went straight to the cartoon. So yeah,
right. But what I'm saying is, you're watching this director's cut. And you've watched Rockies 1 through 3, and then you're watching 4, and it has this great high note of all the accomplishments from 3 and the fight, and then the music fades out and it goes gray going across, but you have no idea that Apollo is going to die or that there's going to be like this dour theme. Like, what did the sound drop off? It's weird, like even the font treatment is very like Impact, very modern, and it just looks like temp title work going across.
I mean, that's likely a product of the director's cut and Stallone having to bankroll this himself until Amazon said, "Hey, we'll distribute it." So like, yeah, put that on the tinkering of the artist and after the fact stuff where, and in terms of like a choice, maybe it does give you pause. Like, wait, I'm supposed to be cheering right now. Is something bad gonna happen? Like, it starts getting in your mind like, whoa, something serious could happen. Not over telegraphing in, like not red shirt, like I said, red shirting Apollo Creed or anything, but like go ahead and give the audience pause where they're not expecting a pause and see how they deal with it. Now, if you just do that to go argue in a car and drive, but okay, but where it heads is a slope that a little speed bump to go, whoa, pump the brakes. This could get serious for a moment here. Buckle up, kids. Like it's not the worst choice in the world, but it feels like a temp, just the piecemeal of what he had to do in 2019 to pull it off. So
Yeah.
And plus, like, I think first and foremost, Stallone is a storyteller. So I think it's in his mind, right? Like we'll never know unless we have like a drink with Stallone or whatever, right? But
right,
like, I think in terms of him knowing what this is, knowing what this project is, knowing what it means to him, knowing now that we lost Carl Weathers and all that, like I know this is way before that, but like with the way that the world was back then, it just felt like a serious time, and instead of sounding the bell for this one, it's a quiet, like almost like, let me drop you off into this new version of this, you know.
Yeah, I at some point maybe I'll go back and watch the original version, but in watching it now,
hell of a comparison. Yeah,
but here's the thing: substantively, I don't remember the difference aside from the disappearance of the robot. And you guys saying that some of this stuff, like the boxing commission stuff, and what Drago said at the end, the one line I thought that was perfect, that revealed stuff about his character that the rest of the movie wasn't interested in. I'm watching him like, yes, this is maybe they threw in an extra montage. I don't know, but there's still not enough movie here to hang a pork pie hat on.
Yeah.
But it is a great piece of 1980s rah-rah cheese.
Oh yeah.
Here's a question though, guys. I want to rope you into anything, and that's not a boxing pun.
Oh, here we go. Get the calendar out.
How do we feel about Rockies 5 and 6? Do we finish this?
You have to at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna bow out of the rest one because for me this is
this is all you need.
Yeah, this is.
I
like unless we start
blame you. Yeah,
the Rocky Balboa movie, like I would love to talk about that one, but I never cared for who's that Tommy Gunn or whatever.
Tommy Morrison. Yeah.
I never cared for that. I never cared for the whole angle where it's like it almost becomes like a father and son thing or whatever. Like, and yeah, there are great moments in those films, but for me, like I'll like if I bring my son in here and ask him what's your favorite Rocky movie, and he'll say Rocky 4 all day, and I never even introduced it to him. You know what I mean? He just walked in one day and he was like, "What the hell is this?" And he just started watching it with me. But I think it's that kind of movie. It's not the kind of movie that's going to lull you in or like invite you in or whatever. It's going to grab you by the fucking neck and be like,
"It's fireworks show." Yeah,
80s like explosion in your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the
4th of July is a story of American independence and founding fathers and tough history, but the fireworks are what we remember. So like we don't celebrate July 4th reading the Declaration of Independence. We celebrated drinking beers, chugging hot dogs and firing shit off in the sky. So like that's Rocky 4. So yeah, I would that's kind of
like I'll say, Ian, like the only reason why I would like join you guys in a discussion is to talk alongside Don, because I think he understands the music of Rocky 4 and Rocky 3.
Darn right I do.
No, I understand
this guy.
Look, I understand the music. It's just terrible. That's why.
Okay.
Anyway,
yes, make your own kind of music. All right.
I shall. I'm going to sing my own kind of song. Well, regardless of who joins me, I'm going to come back next week somehow. And talk about Rocky 5 and 6.
I'm in.
Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa. Cool. Well, thank you, Bryan, for joining us, even if it was just for mostly Rocky 4. It was great having you. And then
just to meet Don, like this was a great episode. So.
Well, I'm sure you guys will get to come back and beat me up some more on future shows. So yes, this has been great.
It could be a week from now.
Well, hey, I'll leave the door open, Bryan. You can decide if you want to.
If you want to drop the link,
like I'm dying to revisit 5 because I haven't seen it since those 90s. So like I even if it's a turd, I'm ready for it, and I can't wait to watch Balboa again. I don't remember I think this one also lists the director's cut where I think I've seen it, but I don't know. So I'm going to give that one a spin. So yeah, I'm stoked. I'm in.
Yeah, I've only seen the theatrical, I think. So yeah, I saw that. I saw Rocky Balboa in the theater, I think like 2 or 3 times.
Same.
I was in
so
love with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thank you for hanging out and talking Rocky 4 and 5. Again, if y'all love the movies like we do, mostly. Rocky, the Ultimate Knockout Collection on 4K. Beautiful.
Right over here. Yeah.
Larger than life 4K.
Yeah. Thank you, Warner Brothers.
Yes. And until next. Oh, we got Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and Every Movie Has a Lesson and Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast. We have Bryan Martinez of the Giallo Room.
Mhm.
And maybe sometimes a spoiler room. I don't know, but if y'all like this show, please like and subscribe and support Bryan and Don. Their information is down below. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.